Welcome to another episode of the Mental Toughness Podcast. As always, it is Matt Phillips, founder of Pro Athlete Advantage, and so excited to be back with you for today's guest. And you've probably noticed over the last couple of podcasts that I'm spending a lot of time in the endurance world. I am running my first 50K Ultramarathon coming up, but it's just been interesting who's been crossing my path lately. I did an interview with Joe DeSena, who is the founder of Spartan Race, for those of you who do those obstacle course racing. So you have to check out that podcast. I did one with Mark Allen, who ESPN named like the greatest endurance athlete of all time, which is phenomenal, and you have to go listen to. And today, I get to introduce you to a man whose conversation absolutely blew me away. His story is phenomenal, as you're going to hear, who has been through a tremendous amount in his life. And these ultra marathons and these adventures that he goes on now just fuel him to spread his message about drug and alcohol addiction, the power that running has had in his life. And today I'm really proud to introduce you to Charlie Engle. That's E-N-G-L-E, Charlie Engle.com, and I'll have links to his website and book and all that in the show notes, of course. But I got introduced to Charlie through a mutual friend, and funny enough, he is actually now running the trail series for Spartan Race. So small world, of course, as it is. But Charlie, I picked up his book. It's called Running Man, and I'm going to put a link, and I highly recommend that you pick it up in either hard copy or the audiobook format. I'm listening to the audiobook right now. I'm almost finished with it. But it is a phenomenal glimpse into his journey. And like I said, he's been through so much in his life. He's dealt with drug addiction, alcohol addiction. He's been part of Alcoholics Anonymous for years and years. And he even had time spent in jail at one point. But through it all, this constant of running has always been there to pull him through. And due to his sobriety now, he has just been on this mission in a variety of different ways through running, to raise awareness for a variety of different programs. You're going to see, if you go to his website, this concept of Project 5.8. So his goal over the next couple of years, I believe, is to go from the lowest point to the highest point on every continent in the world, and to run it. So he's running from the Dead Sea to Mount Everest, which blows me away. There's 5.8 miles of vertical in that run. That's why it's called 5.8. I mean, just amazing what he's been through and how he has this mindset that we really dig into in this podcast that I know you can learn from. We can all learn from those who've gone through addiction. My grandfather passed away years ago, actually, when I was 6 months old, from alcohol addiction. He basically drank himself, unfortunately, to his death. And I still wish to this day that I could have met him. I know I met him, but I was 6 months old. You can learn a lot from Charlie and his journey and the awareness he's bringing for water, the water shortage around the world. I mean, he's got a phenomenal story. So I can't wait I need to stop talking so you can get to this podcast, because you're just going to love it. We just riff for about, almost an hour, and have one of the most fun conversations I've had in a long time. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the one, the only, the running man, Charlie Engle. Hey, Charlie, thanks so much for being here. Happy to reconnect. We connected a couple weeks ago, and now we are live doing the podcast, but thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Matt. I mean, I love what you're doing, and your focus is right up my alley. So hopefully I can offer some insights, or at least a little bit of a basis for some more discussion. So thank you for having me.
No, I love this. And, we're going to dive deep into your story. You've got a fascinating story. I've been listening to your book. I picked it up instead of in hard copy. I picked it up on Audible, as a matter of fact, and have been listening to it and just getting, just hearing your story, which I think is I can't wait to share with everybody because it's phenomenal. And you've been through a lot, you've experienced a lot, you've had the ups, you've had the downs, and to a place where, you know, you've developed this mindset, you developed this approach that I think everyone here is going to learn from.
Thank
And
you. I'm glad to hear you're listening to it. I always tell people too, there's one joke. So I had to audition to read my own audiobook, and you know, because it's a big publisher. Simon and Schuster is one of the biggest, and
yeah,
just because you can write doesn't necessarily mean you can read out loud. So I was on a trip to Poland, and I had to send in this like 3-minute demo of me, you know, reading my own part of my own book, and I'm happy to say I got the job.
that's well, and you do a great job at it too. And
Thank
I
you.
think it's so interesting hearing. I heard or listened to an audiobook. It was David Goggins' latest book. I don't know if you've read that one. He did
Yeah, not yet.
Badwater as well. I know you've done Badwater.
Yeah, I know David.
But it was interesting. He had someone read the book, but then they did this podcast at the end where him and the person reading just bantered back and forth. And it was really fascinating. But I thought it was actually like reading your book. I love hearing the author, like the true author of it.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I don't know, you can feel the emotion. It's just like I imagine, reliving it.
Well, I mean, the hardest part was recreating, of course. It's not like I broke into voices, you know, or whatever, but, you know, dialogue tends to be the most complicated. But then also, you know, I'm not an actor. I'm just you know, I love reading. I love, you know, I am a literary person. So I like for it to be real and authentic. And I'm glad that it seems like that's what you're getting out of the book. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Was it hard, you know, or difficult to, I don't know, as you were reading, did you relive the moments, or was it more of just like reading?
Oh no, I relived a lot of the moments. And you know, what's interesting in the writing process, I am not I wrote nearly 700 pages for my 300-page book. And so what I figured out early on in the process was I had a fantastic editor. I wrote the book myself, but I had a great editor, and she allowed me to basically overwrite everything because I needed to like purge. If I was telling a story, whether it was about addiction or it was about running or whatever it was about, I needed to get the whole story like out of me onto paper. And a lot of these I did handwrite, which was interesting because I just found and some science has shown, you know, we do think differently if you're writing with a pen in your hand versus on a keyboard, and not better or worse, just different. And so a lot of the book I hand wrote, and I found that I needed to just get it all out and then trust the process of editing to figure out which parts of the story were most important. So in reading it out loud, especially the parts with my mother, because she was such an important person in my life, that was hard. It was hard. I caused a lot of pain in my early life. I did some cool things, and I wasn't like a bad guy, but I you know, addiction causes a lot of pain to the people who are caught in the vortex.
Yes. Well, and for those of you, and I'll put links to the book so everyone can go pick it up, whether, you know, on their Kindle or audiobook, whatever format, hard copy even, because to look and go through your journey with you and to be part of that and understand like the alcohol addiction, like the drug addiction, almost turning into a running addiction, right? Until you kind of came through and figured out like there's a different purpose to this running side of things. And now you've done all these amazing like ultramarathons, you're raising money for great causes. You're partnered with some like just fabulous people in what you do now. I highly recommend everyone pick it up. You know, what resonated with me, my grandfather actually, when I was about 6 months old, he passed away due to his alcoholism. And in essence, he kind of drank himself to the grave, unfortunately. So I met him, but I was 3 months old, 4 months old. So I don't remember him, of course. And that's one of the things that I'm very cognizant of in my life and aware of, if just how much I drink, how often I drink, because I know it's something that runs in our family history, right? So something I'm very aware of.
Genetics are a bitch, you know, and they don't, you know, I'm a 4th generation addict, and I think to your point, something I like to sort of dive into, and I know it's what we're here to talk about. Part of what we're here to talk about anyway is this idea that you can't change things. So I spent my first few years of addiction recovery thinking that what I needed to do was like get rid of my addict. Like I tried to run, I ran 30 marathons, and I tried to like pound the addict out of me because I thought that guy was trying to kill me.
Yes.
And it took that 3 years to actually figure out that the addict parts of me are all the best parts of me. They are in fact the parts of me that make me successful. They drive me. Sometimes they drive me crazy, but they actually make me good at things. Like if I didn't have that part of my personality, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know that I would be good at anything. And so early on in my running, someone, even a friend, I'll say, asked it was a pointed question, asked whether I had just changed addictions, because I was running a lot
Mm-hmm.
and I was running obsessively. And I took that question to heart, and it took me a little while to figure out that addiction is all about hiding, about being invisible, and about not having any feelings. And if I had a feeling when I was an active drug addict, I would just do a drug or drink and make that feeling go away.
Yes.
Running, post addiction, running, you feel everything. Like there's no hiding when you're running 100 miles or a marathon even. Like you got nowhere to go except into your own heart and mind and guts, and you have to freaking figure it out and be fully present and do it. And that's the beauty of being sober, but also of running. And it doesn't have to be running, cycling, rowing, I don't care what it is. If you're doing something that challenges you physically, where you have to really dig in sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
it's the safest and most direct route to sort of self-discovery, in my opinion.
Well, that's so interesting, right? Because what a pointed question, right? That did you just switch addictions, right? I could say like, wow, you've been on your phone a lot, Charlie. Like, are you switching addictions, right? To now you're a social media addict, right? Like there's addictions come in all sorts of different forms. What do you think, like your mindset when you first started running, and you were kind of like punishing yourself, getting that addict out, to like, I just want to listen to my body and be aware. Was there like a mindset shift that happened that was like, listen, like this isn't bad, this is good? Like what was it? Was it a moment? Was it a series of moments? Like what led you to that? And then how did you kind of mentally work through like, no, it's okay, this is a like strong skill set, I've just got to point it differently and think about it differently?
Yeah, well, and I'll point out one other thing. Everybody, the person that asked me whether or not I just switched addictions, they actually weren't being kind when they said it. Like there was some judgment in their question, and we all forget sometimes that not everybody wants us to be successful, even the people that are closest to it. And whether that's in business, whether it's in love, or whether it's in addiction recovery. People are weird, man, and we are weird to them. Like there's an odd envy, jealousy thing that happens sometimes. So suddenly that person who was still a drinker and is not today, that person saw my life improving immeasurably. So what they did was snag the piece that they could grab, the thread they could grab, which was my like obsession with running.
Yes.
And they like started poking me with it, And people do that all the time. Look, if you're a successful person in this world, like, and I mean success as it's based with business success, that doesn't necessarily mean financial success. We all know that. Business success in love, in family, whatever, there's an obsession. Like you have to be obsessed with that thing, at least for a little while.
Yes.
If you hope to be successful, you can't just put a little effort into something and hope it's going to be successful, because in my experience, it doesn't work that way. So consequently, we open ourselves up to judgment and criticism from other people, because they may not be getting the attention they want. This person who said that to me was a drinking buddy. Now all of a sudden I spend all my time running. I saw him every day of the week when I was a drinker, and now I'm seeing him once a month, and it's to go
Yes.
have coffee. And
Yes.
so his own, I guess I don't want to dwell on it, but the point is,
Yeah.
what we all have to get to is a place where we listen to ourselves. And the only way we can get to a place where we can trust ourselves and listen to our own voices is through deep dives into our psyche and our mentality and our mental. I mean, you're an expert in mental toughness. You can't be mentally tough if you're never in a position to be mentally tough.
Yes.
So what better way than to take on a physical challenge, for example? Because usually it's safe. Normally you're not going to die running a marathon or running a 100-miler or going and doing something, try to do 500 pull-ups or whatever that thing is that you've said, okay, I'm going to give this a try. You're
Yes.
you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it, but you're going to survive it. But it puts you in a place where you'll get to that moment where you get to ask yourself the question, can I continue? And it's in that moment, I believe, that we figure out what we're made of. And it doesn't mean that we're always made of. I've quit plenty of things. So there's times when I was made of, thin air or water or whatever you want to call it. I was made of nothing because I pulled the plug and I quit. And I'm sorry, I'm going on a ramble here, but the fact is, I believe we all do this. We make decisions emotionally, right? And then we justify them rationally.
Yes.
So I might be in the middle of a really hard physical thing and I quit. That hasn't happened to me much, and it hasn't happened in a long time, and I quit. And later on, I tell myself, well, I had this pain in my right leg and, I was worried that might get worse, or I've got this appointment on Tuesday and I wanted to make sure that I could be okay for that. Whatever BS I want to put in my own head to justify the decision I made, instead of just saying, you know what, I had a moment and I wasn't strong enough in that moment to push past it. So my goal in physical undertakings, in business, and even in relationships is at times to push that situation to the place where I have to ask myself, can I continue? How am I going to continue? And then, or even to the point in physical stuff, especially, where I say, you know what, I want to quit. I want to quit. I want to get to that point so that I can then find a way to get past it, because that's the whole point, in my view.
It's what's so fascinating, right? And I think, to your point, I think when we talk about, substances, right? So it could be drugs, alcohol, stuff like that. That's one path to go down, where it almost masks, and it masks the pain. And there's a purpose to it, right? I mean, people want to escape and get away and do all that stuff, right? But it is masking and almost delaying you asking yourself that question of, like, how do I continue through this? Instead of, just being able to sit with yourself and whether it's in a physical challenge or whatever, be able to ask yourself that question, like, what do I want to do? Like, can I continue? What do I need to do? But that very proactive, where the alcohol and drugs it completely takes it away, where you can't even think clearly. You can't decision at that point. And I think that's such a powerful thing, because it's interesting. I've been talking to a lot of, like, ultra runners and, over the past couple of weeks, and it's, even people from the CrossFit world, and it's how do I push the limit physically where I'm not, in theory, going to die, but that's that space where those questions pop up and you can make that decision to get better. And it's one step, right? I imagine early on, right, you haven't failed a lot, but your knee is hurting and you take just a couple more steps, that now you're better for that, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just giving up at that moment, and you build upon that kind of that success, that win, and push that every time.
Well, usually when we want to quit, and this is just logic, right? It's because we've hit a really low moment. So if it's in a race, physically, what that probably means is we're calorie depleted or we're dehydrated. I mean, those two things cause us. I mean, just look how everybody knows the term hangry. you know,
Yes.
just in your normal life, like you're busy in the morning and whatever, and you drink, you know, if you're like me, you drink too much coffee, and then before you know it, it's 2 o'clock and I haven't eaten.
Right.
And all of a sudden I get irritable, and, or maybe it's not even all of a sudden. Usually my wife
Right.
will just push food in front of me, which is the clear sign that I'm being a dick.
Yes.
But, you know, and I think that, the other thing about it is people push themselves very often without understanding why. And I get that. Maybe it is ego based because they want to post their workout on Instagram or whatever it might be. And I'm not dissing that at all. I mean, whatever it takes to motivate you, that's fine. My hope is, though, I'm at an age where I'm more introspective, and I do want to have a clear understanding of what my goal is, what my purpose is to
Yes.
do a particular event. If I'm going to go run across Africa, you know, I want to know why. I want to know what I'm trying to get out of it, emotionally, physically, financially. Like I want to explore my motives in all those areas instead of just trying to find a cool photo op
Mm.
that somehow makes me look, you know, tough or good. And I also say, anybody that's ever seen anything that I've shot, and you're going to see a lot more of it soon,
Yeah.
or thank you to you, you know, you're listening to my book.
Yes.
One thing you'll see and hopefully hear is that I'm all about, it's not about beating myself up, but I try to be as honest as possible,
Mm.
about being a flawed, searching human being who doesn't have the answers.
Yes.
I don't know that I'll ever have the answer. I hope not,
Right. I haven't found the
because
magic pill either.
yeah,
So
it
yeah.
probably means I've run out of the questions, because, you know, every time I do something, if I do something big enough, whether it's business, relationship, or physical,
Yes.
it just leads to more questions. It
Yeah.
doesn't, like, I don't get to the end of it and say, oh, okay, sensei, I understand now, you know. I
Yes.
mean, and I don't want that. Why?
Yes.
That would be boring,
Yes.
you know.
Very true.
And I want to turn on the camera when I'm struggling, when I'm getting ready to throw up on my shoes, or when I want to quit. And I want to talk about that instead of turning it on and saying, yeah, everything's great, you know, we're just going to
Mm.
keep moving. Number one, that's boring as hell to me, and I wouldn't want to watch it. I don't like
Right.
watching that stuff when other
Right.
people do it. I
Right.
want to hear about real stuff. I want to hear how they're feeling at their lowest moments.
Mm.
That's what I want to hear. And then how they figured out how to get past it.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I mean, so tell me this, because you're at a low point with your addiction, right? What was your catalyst for change, and how did you make that change? Because
Yeah, somebody was shooting at me.
oh, that'll get you going. That's
It's
true.
funny, man. When somebody tries to kill you, it changes everything, or at least it should. And for me, that is what happened. You know, I mean, my life was nearly taken, and before then, I had tried to quit. I even had a joke.
Right.
You know, I tried to quit 100. Quitting's easy. I've done it 100 times.
Yeah.
You know, because of course, every time I had a binge for 3 or 4 days, and I'd spend all my money and I'd disappear and disappoint the people around me,
Yep.
I would mean it with all my heart. I would say, that's it. I'm done. I quit. I'm never doing that again. And I meant it. I wasn't lying to myself or to anybody else. The
Yes.
problem is, a few days later, a week later, a month later, you all of a sudden you feel better. Life is good. You know, I made the big sale.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. And it's like, you know, surely I can have a beer to celebrate.
Mm.
And despite the fact that I had failed at it 100 times before, like to ever just have one beer,
Yes.
I would convince myself that I was going to do it this time, and the cycle would begin again. So what happened for me was just that, you know, I finally realized nobody could save me. The birth of my first son, he couldn't save me.
Mm-hmm.
My all the people in my life that wanted me to quit couldn't save me. And, you know, this person who was shooting at me certainly wasn't trying to save me.
Right.
And I finally, after a 6-day binge and somebody shooting at me, I had the clearest thought of my life. Nobody is coming to save you. And I need to do this for myself. And that was the day I went to an AA meeting that night, put on my running shoes the next day. And for the next 3 years, I did those two things every single day without missing a day.
Wow.
And I knew I became convinced that if I could just do those two things every day, go to a meeting and run, my life would get better. And it did. And it's still getting better. I don't run every day, but
Right.
you know, I do something active recovery, and by that I mean addiction recovery. I do something every day to help me in that area, and I do train pretty much 7 days a week in some fashion.
Yep. It's that realization that you had being shot out. Was it the system that kept you on track and keeps you on track to this day? Like kind of the process,
It
the
is.
system that.
Yeah, you know, it's trusting the process. Exactly right. Because very often, you know, look, I'll give you what I think is a great example. People come to me all the time and say, I want to become a runner, but I hate running. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I can just tell you, you have to change one thing for sure. You know, whether you mean it or not, the language in your head about how much you hate running isn't helpful.
Yes.
And you don't actually hate running. You hate how running feels. You know, you hate in the moment the pain, whether it's physical, the discomfort, like those are the parts of running that people hate. They don't hate the results, because who could hate the results of having an endorphin release and losing weight and being healthier and being outside in nature? And if you don't like any of those things, then I don't have any interest in talking to you anyway.
Right.
So, you know, assuming you like those things as results, then running is a way to get them. And the point I'm trying to make is this. It usually takes a long time to get out of shape, and people have this bizarre thing that, like, you know, 2 weeks of training is going to all of a sudden get them in shape. And I tell them all the time, you need to commit yourself to this program for 90 days, and you need to say to yourself every single day how much you love running. And then you need to go out there with a plan by me or by one of the other million, you know, running gurus. Just pick a plan. Have a plan. In my view, the plans that work are the ones that, this is a joke, but that start slow and taper off.
Right.
You know, everybody used to run when they were kids, right? Or when if you were an athlete in high school, and you ran hard and you ran fast, because that's what it felt like to have a young body and enthusiasm.
Yes.
We get older, our bodies aren't as cooperative. So it feels like crap when you try to go out and run 5 miles at your fastest pace when you haven't run in years. It's just idiotic. And of course you get hurt. And of course it, you know, it sucks and it doesn't feel good. And, you know, and a few days later you want to quit. Well, no kidding. Who wouldn't? So you have to have a plan that allows you to. I do a walk run. I love Jeff Galloway is a friend of mine, and I think his programs are outstanding because they really rely on running and walking, and they rely on measured pace. And you know, you should finish your early training runs / walk feeling good, not feeling like you never want to do it again. And give it 90 days. And if after 90 days of doing that kind of program, your life isn't much better, I would be shocked.
That's amazing, right? Because I think it's a couple of things. One, luck favors the prepared, and it's just about preparedness, right? And I'm such a big believer in the kind of start slow, and what are the small things that if you do consistently, that's going to get you where you want to go, right? So
totally.
The start slow is like, you can build a plan and then just keep at it every day. That's the self-talk. That's all that stuff. So you're bang on with that. We try to do, too much, too quick. And we end up hurting ourselves. It's amazing.
Well, and it's no different, right? If you examine relationships, you know, if you're a single person and you meet someone and you're excited about them, man, there's that. And you want to see them every day. You want to whatever. And usually those relationships don't work out because it's too much, it burns out. And the same with business. I mean, except for maybe a few incredibly brilliant or lucky people, you start a business with a lot of enthusiasm, and man, you make that first sale or whatever it is that you're doing, and it's fantastic, and then becomes the hard work.
Yes.
Because it just doesn't happen that way. You have to build it. And people make the biggest mistake we all make is that we quit at low points, and we also make assumptions when we're at high points. Like, you should never make a big decision when you're at a particular low or when you're at a particular high, because those two spaces aren't real. They don't last. The bad times never last, and the good times don't either, not in their absolute best and worst forms. And so, you have to let those times pass. Like, don't have a crappy run and say, screw this, I'm never doing it again. Just get on with it. Go in, drink, rest, have a shower, don't think about it, get up the next day and try again. And very often I tell my sober people, especially newly recovered people who will call me as they should. Like, I'm their sponsor, and they'll call and say, I want to have a drink today. My life is crap and this and that. I'm like going, well, if my life looked like yours, I'd want to have a drink too. That's what I always say, because I don't think it helps people to coddling and saying whatever. But what I always say, and they always know I'm joking with them, but what I say is this, look, I get you. I hear you, because people want to be acknowledged. They want their pain to be acknowledged. Don't say you shouldn't feel that way, because I would never say that to somebody, because that's not my, it's not my business to tell them how they should feel.
Yes.
What I suggest, though, is, look, do me a favor, get a good night's sleep. If you wake up tomorrow and you still want to drink, you give me a call. I'll go buy a 6-pack and I'll come over and drink it with you. And it's that relief of the pressure valve that not one time has that ever happened. They always call me the next day going, thank God I did not do that, because they wake up no longer in that super low place and understanding that they dodged a bullet. And very often we step in front of the bullet at the last minute ourselves. Yes. And we sabotage everything. And figuring out how to not do that is one of life's biggest challenges.
I guess what I hear you even saying is like, hey, so a couple of things. One is like, it's okay to be quiet and sit with something, low or high. Just sit with it and understand it and just be with it, right? It's okay. I think we get so uncomfortable in silence these days, where it's like we have to go if we're not doing something, that something's wrong. And it's like, that's furthest thing from the truth, right? High or low, come back to that center place, right? Which in essence is strip the emotion out of it. And by sitting with it quietly, you're stripping the emotion out of it, getting back to like, hey, here are the facts almost, right? And now I can make a proper decision with this stuff. And the other key point I heard was call somebody. My goodness, if you need help, call somebody. Because that's the quickest lifeline, if you will, to get a perspective where somebody, they care about you, but they don't know the ins and outs, right? You had a bad run. Okay. Wasn't there. Didn't experience it. Let's talk about it. Want a drink? I don't know. Business decision? I don't know. Let's talk about it.
If you don't call somebody, it actually means, in my view, that you've made the decision to be miserable. Like, you've just decided you're going to be miserable. And when it comes to, sobriety in particular, very often I won't get a call from somebody sometimes. And it's because they've already made the decision to relapse, even if they haven't done it yet. Like, something inside them has already turned and they've decided they're done with it. And very often, if you just, the voice that's in our heads, our own voice, is usually is very often unreliable. Yes. And if we say the words out loud about how we're feeling, saying them out loud to another human being very often takes the power away from them. And again, I'm not talking about just recovery. I'm talking
Right.
about fear around, let's say you made the decision to enter the marathon 3 months from now, and you just went out and had a crappy 6-mile run. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, how am I possibly going to run 26 miles if I can't get through 6? And it's that kind of negative self-talk that causes people to pull the plug, and they'll do it very often quietly and not telling it. Whereas if you just realize it was a bad run, nothing more than that, and you just keep sticking with it,
Yep.
it will get better. But saying it out loud to another person very often, I think, it takes away the power of the negativity.
Yes.
It gets you into a conspiratorial project with somebody. It gets somebody else that has at least a mildly vested interest in the outcome.
Yes.
And it changes the whole dynamic.
And so I think you're so right. I think there's this, it's interesting because talking about mental toughness, I've had this kind of shift in that, like, toughness has this negativity attached to it where it's, show no fear, show no weakness. Like, and being mentally tough is like the furthest thing from that. It's like, understand your situation, like what you're dealing with, self-talk, whatever, in every area of life, and being able to address it quicker than you did the time before. That's what building this toughness is about, right? So gosh, when I started my business, this was in corporate America too, and in a corporate world when I was living overseas as well, of, if I have to call somebody, then I'm not tough.
Yeah.
Right. That I don't have that within me. I need to have that within me. Like, and I've realized over time, and this is what I teach now, the same as you, is like, no, like you're building a toolkit here. That's all you're doing. You're building this resource list. You're building an arsenal, like whatever you want to call it. But you're building this where when the times get tough, because that's usually when it is, you pull on a resource, and calling somebody is massive. I do it all the time in my business. Like, I get super amped up about something and I pick up the phone. Like, I try to settle myself first, right? Because we do have control.
Yeah.
But then if I can't, I make a phone call immediately, and that person on the other end is like, okay, well, here's my perspective. And then I'm like, oh, okay. I did this yesterday with a client. He had this guy threaten, one of his top employees threatened not to leave, but he said he wanted like a 60% raise, and they're in this really big growth period. And he's like, I don't have cash for this. And I'm asking him, like, well, did you talk to him? Did you, like, why is he doing this? And he said, no, he said, this email is this or that. And I go, you just need to get him on the phone.
Yeah.
I just ask questions, no emotion, just why?
Yeah.
Like, why now? What's going on? Are you doing okay? And just ask questions, and then get off the phone. And get off the phone and then sort through the scenarios, right?
Yeah.
I think that phone call piece, that AA, I mean, that's what, one of the big pieces, the sponsor thing. And if we can take that and just apply it to everyday life, it's huge. It's huge.
Totally. Well, and we spend 99% of our time, in my view, 99% of our time preparing for the 1% when things go wrong, right? Because for the most part, all of our lives are, this sort of normal roller coaster, up and down, good days, so-so days, a few bad days. But generally speaking, we spend our time in the safe sort of middle ground, trying to make things happen, and on the other end, trying not to let bad things happen. But, we're preparing for that 1% when everything is off. When you get the call from your best employee saying they want to quit, or you get the call from, or whatever, with a loved one who is angry with you and wants to end the relationship, or whatever it might be. I mean, those things, luckily, they don't happen all the time, but we're always preparing. And as an addict, I really say that is because that 1% of the time is what will get you killed as an addict. If you're not prepared for the negative thoughts and this idea that, life is, it's going to hit you once in a while. My life sucks. Like, that's what that voice is going to say. If you're not prepared for that, you're going to get drunk. And I don't know where that's going to lead. I've got friends who have relapsed through the years and they've never been able to find their way, back. And, anytime I have any thoughts of drinking, doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, I'll fantasize about, having a beer or something like that. And I'm able, though, I think this is the thing that we struggle with as human beings. I'm able to take that and see the next 5 steps.
Yes. Yes.
I could have one beer today. I might be able to have one beer for the next week or the next month or the next year. Like, I might be able to do that. I doubt it. But eventually I would have 2, and then I'd have 4, and then all bets would be off and I would be right back where I was. I mean, I have zero doubt in my mind that that's where it would lead.
Yes.
And just because I could get away with it today, and the same thing happens with business. You have to be doing the work, and with running.
Yes.
You have to be doing the work. I don't know if you know this, but I'm doing a lot of work with Spartan these days.
Yes.
So I launched this trail running series for the Spartan brand, and we have races coming up all year this year. And it's been really interesting for me to sort of dive into that Spartan mentality, which is this very, tough at all costs. And I don't really fall into that. The other thing is way too long conversation for today's podcast, but men in particular struggle with the idea of toughness because there's certain expectations that are put upon us from the time we're little boys.
Yes.
And we're told not to cry, and we're told not to do this, and we're told to be tough, and it's very confusing.
Yes.
And figuring out later how to sort of manage all of that and still it's taken me a long time to figure out that I can have strong emotions and that it's okay to feel them, and that, I will still say, though, anger is the thing that I'm best at.
Yes.
If there's an emotion that I'm the most comfortable with, it's anger.
Yes.
And I've worked hard to change that and to stop myself from diving off into the anger deep end every time something goes wrong, because that's still my default. Like, that's where I want to go.
It's so true, right? We'll have to have a separate conversation about that. I think about the stigmas of we put on our sons, and I fall into as well. I've got 2 girls and a boy, and with my son, I know I'm tougher on him, right?
Yeah.
Funny enough, pardon the use of words, their choice of words.
Yeah.
I'm tougher on him, but that's the thing I constantly have to work on too, and just be aware of like, oh, it's okay, he's doing this, and like, why am I saying this? And because it's stuff that I was brought up with.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. No, my parents
totally. Well, and here's the thing: you were either brought up with it or you weren't. And some people do what their parents did. Some people do the exact opposite. I mean, whatever. But what I will say, and I don't even know where you are in my book. Okay, sorry, we're in the middle of a podcast here, but I have the ever-present leaf blower or something has decided to crank up behind me. So
I'll have
a little adjustment there.
No problem. That's hilarious.
What the hell was I saying? Oh my God. See, I'm getting old, man.
Oh, I was talking about kids and like what we grew up with and kind of beliefs and all that.
It's my mother gave me she gave me tons of gifts, but the greatest gift she gave me was the ability to think. She taught me to think, not what to think. And again, I'm not getting into anybody else's parenting business because that's none of my business. But
right.
My grandmother always said too that all that matters is what you say after the but. But the fact is, if kids are just parroting what their parents have taught them, whether it's words or whatever, if they have to come to a place, in my opinion, where eventually they feel those things for themselves. If they're going to make a moral or ethical decision, it has to ultimately be grounded in them, not in what would my parents say or what would my parents do.
Yes.
And trying to, instead of always giving kids the right answer, allowing them enough leeway. A great example, I asked my mom when I was 10 years old who I should vote for in the presidential election. And it was Nixon and McGovern. And like, there's never been an election in the country where the choice was more obvious. I mean, in other words, whichever side you were on, like it was a super liberal side and a super conservative side. So like, and my mom was a very liberal person, yet she would not answer the question. She said, her answer was, well, Charlie, some people believe this and some people believe this, and you're just going to have to make your mind up for yourself. And that laid the groundwork for what I think is a very, hopefully a very free thinking, accepting person that, likes to listen. I mean, ultimately I have ended up on the very liberal side of life, as my mother. I mean, I probably just naturally, drifted that way. But the point was, she made me think about things, and she made me come up with the answer of why I would vote for this person, or why I would feel a way about a certain person based on skin color or sex or whatever it might be. And because was never an appropriate answer with my mother, and I'm grateful for that.
I love that. And probably this part of the story you're leaving out is she said, some people believe this, some people believe that. Make up your mind, but you better be liberal. No, I'm kidding. What she said after the bike, right? So,
she was, she was all action, man. So as I always say, it's attraction rather than promotion. Everybody in our lives is watching us. And not to the degree that we think, and I don't mean like social media, but those people that are close to us and that we spend time with, they know if we're full of shit or not, basically. They know if we are acting in the way that we're talking. And that's an important distinction. And so if my view is, I've been sober 26 years. I behave the way I behave, and I'm happy to say that a lot of not sober people reach out to me, because hopefully what that says is they see something in my life, in my behavior, in the current existence that I have that is attractive to them.
Yes.
And they want more of that and less of what they've been living.
Love it.
And I can't, though. To me, it crosses a line for me to go to them. I would never go to a person and say, you know what, man, you clearly have a drinking problem. I can help you. Like, that is the surest way to destroy either a relationship, or they'll never, alcoholics will just dig in even harder.
Yeah.
And the same thing doesn't it happen for you in business all the time? Like, if you see someone else who is being successful or is doing what you want to do, and you're watching them, right? Eventually, you're going to pick up the phone and say, hey, man, how are you doing this? Because I want to do that. Whereas if that person were to call
I do all the time.
Yeah, but if they were to call you and say, hey, man, I see that you're struggling in your business. Can I give you some help? You'd be like, screw you, I'm not struggling.
That is so true. That is so true.
It's attraction rather than promotion. Live your life and let other people, see it. And if they want more information from you, they'll ask you for it.
I love that.
That's the way I view it.
I love that. Well, it's like I tell people all the time, it's like this whole stigma around sales, like I'm selling something. It's like I had this mental switch as well, where I said one day, it was like, I'm not selling anything. All I'm literally doing is sharing something I'm excited about. And if you jive with it, if you dig it, if you like it, then, maybe something will work out. Right. But it's that attraction versus promotion. I was trying to promote the heck out of what I was doing, instead of just saying, this is how I live. This is how I act. This is how I think. Like, hey, if you want some of it, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, even for coaches, even for people who do coaching and they're being paid to help people, there should be a lot less sentences that start with "you should," and a lot more sentences that start with "here's how I did it."
Yes.
Like, and so again, I always frame things in the book too. and in my look, things are getting ready to crank up for me in my world right now. So I have a big project I told you about,
Yes.
and so my own like videos and things that I'm going to be doing are getting ready to go on to hyperspeed,
Yes.
and I'll be doing a podcast actually with Spartan, basically the Spartan Trail. So it'll be me and my friend Lewis, who's Escobar, who's also a trail legend. And you know, the point is, I'm trying to live what I say, you know, and I want to always start things with, you know, here's how I did it. Here's what I do. You know, people will ask a question, how should I, if their sentence starts with how should I, of course it does give me permission to maybe offer up a little more of an opinion.
Sure.
But I would never claim to know the absolute answers, even as a coach. And I rely, in fact, on something I call instinctive training. You know, I want a person to ask themselves a certain set of questions. Like if they're going to ditch their long run on Saturday because they stayed out too late or because whatever, that's okay. But I want them to ask a series of questions before they make the decision to pull the plug and figure out, are you just being lazy or is there a legitimate reason behind it that says, okay, you know what, today's not the best day for me to do this long, hard workout. I'll do it tomorrow or I'll do it later.
Right.
So my hope is that I can impart some wisdom of my own, but most of it will be based entirely on my own personal experience.
Yes. Well, I think, you know, one theme I just hear, and you haven't said these words, this word yet, but it's ownership. That's what I hear throughout your entire story. And if you listen to the book, you hear this of like owning the way you think, your behaviors, the actions, like the outcomes. Own your business, like you own kind of your performance and where you want to go. And that's what I've heard over and over and over again without you saying that word ownership. Of like, we own it. Like what we grew up with in the past, that doesn't define us. That's just a piece of it. We own what we do going forward. We own getting up in the morning for that run, to call that person for help. Like all that stuff, we own that. And that's what I think.
No, you nailed it. I mean, I really appreciate you saying that because that's important. And I do. Look, I can also sit here. There's proof of me out there. One danger of doing all the movies and videos and everything else that I've done is my behavior at times is right there for everybody to see.
Yes.
And sometimes it's not pretty,
Yep.
you know, and there have been times where I've been a dick or I've been angry and completely over the top and you know, and that's there for people to see. So I certainly do not claim perfection, but I do claim progress. And I think that again is that should be the goal, is to own the hard things, own the mistakes as much as you can, you know, own, I mean, I love that we've talked almost an hour and we haven't even talked about all the nuts and bolts of like this, you know, my long running and my time in federal prison and like, you know, because what we've talked about is real stuff around mental toughness, and all of those things are just things, and my ownership of them is kind of ubiquitous in my life. I mean, they are part of me. But I don't look at the hard experiences I've had as any sort of wasted time. It's all been powerful. And all I know is I'm going to continue going after it hard. And wherever that leads me is where it leads me.
That's incredible. And that's why I love doing these podcasts, because I never know where they're going to end up. And I prepare, and I've got lists of questions, and I've got a document here that talks about going from Dead Sea to Everest, 4,500 miles, Badwater, 135 mile run. I mean, that's named like probably the toughest race in the world. All these different things. You ran a marathon backwards this weekend, didn't you? Was that
Well, you
last
know
week?
what? I actually supported a friend of mine who was
Support a
running
friend.
it
Okay.
backwards. So yeah,
So
I just made fun of him the whole time, mostly.
it's great, but you keep people laughing. You own his amusement, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, there's incredible opportunities that we didn't dive into, and God, I going to be cognizant of your time and let you run here, because we could spend a whole nother probably 4 hours just going through all the races you've done and how to work through it. But it was like, it comes back to that, like, you owned your mental side, you owned your physical side, you built a plan, you did the small things, you stayed consistent with it. And that's what's led you through all those tough times to this point.
Well, and we can. I'll come back on anytime. We can talk
Yep.
more nuts and bolts. And one of the things I always say when I do talks, when I speak, is people can find out. I mean, we're in the age of the internet, right? You can find out anything about anybody. So if something I've said today sparks somebody saying, "Hey, I want to know more about that guy,"
Yep.
I mean, all I got to do is just punch in the name or go to my website. You'll see my version, or just
Yes.
Google me, and then you get to see everybody else's version.
Right.
Because there's always, if you haven't got critics, you're not trying hard enough.
Exactly right.
And and that's just the way I see it. Is it's my job to continuous forward movement wins the day. Like, that will almost always get you through. And I'll leave you kind of with this idea, and it is what I believe more than anything else. What happens to us in life isn't nearly as important as what we do about it. Good and bad things happen to everybody. Some of them are self-inflicted wounds. Some of them come out of the blue without any, forethought. But it just doesn't matter. What matters is how we respond to them, what we do about it, how it changes us, how we grow and change through those hard processes.
Yes.
Nobody gets to the end of their life and somebody asks you, like, what were the formative times of your life? Nobody says, oh gosh, my life was just so easy, I really can't answer that question. Yep. No, instead, they give you a long list of the hard, difficult challenges that they faced in their lives. Yes. And so avoiding those hard times is pointless. It's even harmful, I would say. If your goal in life is comfort, what the hell are you doing? What has that ever gotten you? I'm not saying you can't be comfortable, but if that's the actual goal, I actually don't even understand that. But the goal should be growth and learning, and what you're doing with this podcast and what you do in your daily life and your business is making a difference. And I appreciate that.
I appreciate that very much, Charlie. This is it's just an absolute honor to spend time with you, and I'm so thankful we got connected. And we'll shoot Ken a message just thanking him again for sending that email to introduce us, to lead us to this point. And I know this will be the first of many conversations that we get to have.
Anytime.
And maybe a race I'll come out and run with you. You'll get a baseball guy running with you. So
I would love it. Well, I told you when we talked last time, I've got 3 or 4 professional baseball players that are on my team of this new project that I'm launching. So for those people that do want more info, they can go to just charlieengle.com, or they can go to my new site called 5.8 Project. And that is basically my project to go from the lowest place on all 7 continents to the highest mountaintop on all 7 continents. Culminating in going from the Dead Sea to the top of Mount Everest, about 4,500 miles. But I have an adventure coming up just 3 months from now. I'll be leaving with my partner, Andre, to Africa. And we're going from the lowest place in Africa to the highest point in Africa. And I'll leave you with this little teaser. So Andre has no legs. He's a fascinating guy who does things with no legs that we would all be lucky enough to be able to accomplish with 2 legs. So you guys should check it out.
I cannot wait, and I will share all this stuff with everybody once that's kind of ready, and get everybody prepped, and all the links to the 5.8project.com and charlieengle.com get you all that stuff. But man, thank you so much. You're off.
Dude,
This is a
man, it's
blast.
been my pleasure, man. You asked great questions, and it was one of the most fun conversations I've had in a while. So thank you for that.
Oh, good. I appreciate it, man. And we'll be in
Yeah.
touch for sure.
All right, buddy. Take
All
care.
right. Thanks.
All right, later. Bye.